I got home from my internship abroad to find the garage empty and a for rent sign in the window. My key didn't fit. My clothes were in trash bags on the curb. "You're an adult. Figure it out," my dad texted. I replied, "Check your mailbox next week." Then I blocked them. 19 months later, they hit 187 missed calls. My name is Max. I'm 24, the quiet oldest son who was always reliable, which in my family meant invisible until a bill showed up. I was the kid who fixed the router, drove grandma to appointments, and slid cash across the table when the electric got unexpectedly high. My younger sister, Harper, was the golden one. She had potential. I had steady hands. Same house, different rules. 3 facts about me, the kind that don't make it into group chats. I save receipts, I hate birthday songs, and I can fall asleep anywhere, even under fluorescent airport lights. I'd just gotten back from a 7-month internship abroad. Nothing flashy, just a logistics role in Rotterdam that paid a small stipend and taught me how to read a port schedule like sheet music. I flew home on a Tuesday because Tuesday flights are cheap. I texted mom at the layover, landing at 5:40 p.m., "Need a pickup?" She read it, didn't reply. Classic. In the taxi, I watched familiar blocks slide by. The diner with the flickering neon letter E. The basketball court with the tilted rim. The thrift store that still had mannequins from the 90s. I was excited about nothing dramatic. Just my bed, my stupid pillow with the flattening memory foam, the garage where I'd left my bike hanging from hooks Dad said were too fancy, and leftovers I could reheat at midnight. The driver turned onto our street. I leaned forward, automatic muscle memory guiding my eyes to the driveway. The garage door was open, but it was empty. Not we cleaned it, empty. Hollow, echoing empty. The wall where my bike had hung was just dusty outlines and 2 lonely screws. The shelves Dad swore he'd organize were gone. My toolbox. The slow, ugly orange tool chest I'd bought off Craigslist. Not there. The place looked staged for a real estate brochure. I got out with my carry-on and the tiny suitcase that had carried me through 3 countries and 5 night buses, and I walked up the walkway in that weird quiet you get on a too hot evening. There was a plastic sign in the window I'd never seen before. Red. For rent. The curtains behind it were different too. Cheaper. Wrong color. My key didn't fit. I tried it twice. I tried it hard enough to make my knuckles go white. I laughed once because my brain needed a joke. Then I stopped laughing, because on the curb by the neighbor's recycling bin were 4 black trash bags. One had split down the side. A blue shirt I knew too well, my shirt, was peeking out like it was embarrassed to be caught outside. I touched the doorknob like it might explain itself. Then I stepped back and scrolled my phone with the slow stubbornness of someone who refuses to understand a simple fact. 2 unread texts blinked up at me, both from Dad, sent while I was in the air. "You're an adult. Figure it out." We needed the space. Don't be dramatic. The air felt thick. I looked at the for rent sign again, at the bags on the curb with thrift store stickers on 3 of my books, at the empty garage that had been my small pride. Somewhere on the block, a dog barked like it had a schedule. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked on, slicing the heat into regular sound. For a second, I was 6 again, holding my report card in the kitchen while Mom said, "That's what you're supposed to do." And the conversation moved on. For a second, I was 19, transferring $150 to Harper at midnight because the app won't let me order my textbooks unless I add the rush fee. I stood there on the sidewalk with my suitcase and a cheap airport sandwich in my backpack, and I felt something old and heavy in me turn over, like a log in a fire finding a new surface to burn. Across the street, Mr. Patel paused with his dog. "You back, Max?" he called friendly. I opened my mouth to say yes, and what came out was, "I guess." I didn't knock. I didn't call. I slid my phone into my pocket and knelt by the trash bags, picking out what was mine, one ordinary, humiliating item at a time. A t-shirt with my high school logo. My beat-up running shoes with the flap on the heel. A mug with chipped glaze that said "World's Okayest Son." I put them into my suitcase, zipped it closed, and felt the zipper catch on a thread like even it had questions. Then I sat on the curb in front of a house that apparently wasn't my home anymore and stared at the porch light I'd rewired last summer while Dad watched baseball inside and yelled, "Don't blow the breaker, genius." Somewhere between the last time the mower lines were straight and this moment right now, a decision had been made. Not by me, not with me, just about me. I watched the sun slide behind the neighboring roof. I waited for anger big enough to carry me. What arrived instead was quiet, clicking into place like a lock. When I was 10, Dad called me banker like it was a joke. "Banker, hand me the tape," he'd say while I held the roll. fixing a cardboard box because he refused to buy storage bins. At 12, I learned the actual jokes were about me. Max loves chores, Harper would say, and they'd laugh because I didn't argue. It wasn't a cartoon villain household. It was the kind where everything had an explanation if you wanted one. Dad worked construction and said his back hurt. Mom managed scheduling at a clinic and said her nerves were shot. Harper had a lot of pressure, which, over the years, covered everything from dropping a class to totaling a car because the light was confusing. Money talk always found me. When I started bussing tables at 15, Mom borrowed $60 from my tip jar for the water bill and texted, "We'll settle up." We never did. The first time Harper needed books, "Today, or else I'll be behind all semester." I sent $175 at 11:47 p.m. The last time, it was $380 just until Friday. Friday became next Friday. Then the card randomized my payment date, then silence. When I asked, she sent a single skull emoji, and "You're seriously keeping score?" Wow. I kept score anyway. Quietly. $20 here, $90 there. Gas money. Tires. The emergency dentist that was actually veneers for Harper's crowded smile. Dad's tools stolen from the site that later appeared in our garage with the price tags still sticking to the plastic. All of it worked because I made it work. I picked up shifts. I rode my bike instead of buying a bus pass. I learned to like oatmeal because it was cheap, and I learned to say no problem in the bright tone of someone everyone believes will say yes again. I was the helper, the spare key, the "can you stop by?" The rule was simple. If Harper wanted it, it was a priority. If I wanted it, I had to justify it like a grant application. When senior year came, I got into a state college with partial scholarship. We had a family meeting at the kitchen table. Dad spread out bills like a dealer and said, "Look at reality." Mom sighed about timing. I offered to commute and keep working nights. Harper, a junior in high school at the time, asked if I could just wait a year because her dance team needed a fundraiser chair and I always make spreadsheets that don't suck. I deferred. Everyone praised me for being mature. No one mentioned that maturity had a cost. I finished community college while working at the freight yard, then transferred to a state program late, with a financial aid package that had more gaps than forms. I filled the gaps, of course I did, with shifts, with loans in my name because Dad's credit was complicated and Mom's was tied up. I graduated without ceremony because Harper's boyfriend's parents were throwing an engagement party that weekend, and it's a whole thing with the invitations. And then Rotterdam happened. A professor handed me a flyer, internship at a shipping company. It wasn't glamorous. It was spreadsheets, arrival windows, and emails to people in 6 time zones. It was also a plane ticket and housing covered if I could front the deposit and the first month, reimbursed later. Fronting was my skill set. I sold my old guitar. I took the ugly tool chest off Craigslist to make a little extra because some guy wanted it delivered. I left the bike in the garage on hooks I'd paid for. I told Mom the dates. She said, "Lucky. Harper never got an opportunity like that." Harper rolled her eyes and said, "Max is a logistics guy. Of course he'll do Europe." I wired the deposit and went. While I was gone, I got a series of texts that felt off. "Dad, do you still need all that space in the garage?" Me, "I have one shelf in my bike." "Dad, your stuff is messy." Me, "I labeled everything." "Mom, we're thinking about renting the extra room," meaning mine, "for a bit." Me, "I'll be back in July." "Mom, we'll talk." We didn't talk. I mailed home 2 postcards. Harper posted 3 beach pictures with captions like, "We thrive," and never asked about my time zone. When I called on Sundays, Dad put me on speaker while he rattled dishes so the echo swallowed my words. "You sound different," Mom said once. "Like you think you're better." I bit my tongue so hard it tasted like pennies. The rent thing escalated in a way that only makes sense if you've lived inside the long game of a family that decides you're a resource. A week before my return flight, Harper texted, "Need to borrow your car when you land. Just for a week." I asked why. She said sorority retreat. Sponsors expect presents. I said the car's registration was due and I didn't have extra for tickets. She sent, "LOL, you're dramatic." Then a photo of nails I'm guessing were $70. I didn't reply. 3 days later, Dad sent a photo of an empty garage labeled "Progress" with 3 clapping emojis. I stared at it on my phone while I watched a cargo ship crawl along the horizon like it had all the time in the world. I had all the facts. I just didn't connect them. Because connecting them meant admitting something ugly. They had made a decision that saved them money, cost me home, and they'd done it without telling me because they counted on the part of me that would figure it out quietly. The taxi meter ticked. The curb got darker. I set my suitcase beside me and gave myself permission to be practical because rage wouldn't get me a bed. I called 3 people. My friend Jordan, who picked up on the first ring and said, "You can crash on my couch." My supervisor from the internship, who said, "If you need a bridge week, we have a spare cot near the office. Not glamorous, but it's safe." And Mr. Patel, who quietly handed me a key to his back apartment above the deli, saying, "It's empty for 5 days. No charge. Don't argue." I texted Dad once. "When did you change the locks?" He replied, "We gave you notice." I scrolled. One text from 2 weeks ago. "We're simplifying." I stared at the screen. Simple. At midnight, sitting on the little steps behind the deli with my suitcase, I opened the Notes app and made a list. I always make lists when the ground tilts. Title: What I can control. 1. A bed for the next week. 2. A P.O. box. 3. Remove myself from accounts I pay. 4. Pick up my SS card from the drawer if it's still there. 5. Stop being a wallet with feelings. In the morning, I'd go back for the rest of my clothes before the trash truck came. I'd walk up at 6 a.m. with a duffel and no apologies. I'd get my documents, not because I wanted to see anyone, but because you learn the hard way to secure the little things. I fell asleep to the hum of the deli fridge. I dreamed about ship horns and spreadsheets that balanced themselves. When I woke, my phone had 3 missed calls from Mom and a text from Harper. "Can you Venmo me $230 by noon? My tuition portal is glitching." No question mark. No greeting. I stared at that number and thought about the empty hooks in the garage. And the part of me that always flinched first didn't move. The big scene wasn't a wedding or a gala. It was a kitchen. It was Saturday. I'd gone at sunrise, grabbed what I could from the bags, then stood at the door until Dad opened it because he thought I was the new tenant. He blinked. "Oh, morning," I said. Calm. I shifted my duffel higher on my shoulder. "I need my documents. Social, passport, the little fireproof folder in the bottom drawer. Then I'll be out of your way." Dad stepped aside like he was granting a favor. "You can't stay here," he said preemptively. "We have a lease for the room." "I know," I said. "I saw the sign." Mom appeared, hair in a towel, eyes already narrowed like she could smell a disagreement. "We texted you," she said. "You texted, 'We're simplifying,'" I replied, because facts were safer than feelings and I'd learned to speak in receipts. The locks were changed. My things were on the curb. That's not simplification. That's eviction. "That's dramatic," Mom snapped. "Stop calling me dramatic," I said, still even. "It's lazy and it's wrong." We stood in the tiny triangle of kitchen floor where I'd spent a decade scraping plates into the trash and rinsing the stubborn bits while everyone else talked in the living room. Harper wandered in wearing one of my old sweatshirts like a punchline. "Max," she said, faux sweet. "Are you seriously mad? You were gone for months." "I told you my dates," I said. She pushed hair behind her ear. "You always make everything a thing." Dad gestured toward the hallway. "Get your papers," he said, tired. "We have a showing at noon." That word, showing, crackled in the air like a bad wire. I went to my old room. The posters I'd left taped up were gone. The tape shadows remained like outlines of a body at a crime scene. The bed was stripped. In the corner, a new cheap dresser sat with 2 drawers slightly off their tracks. On the closet rod, 3 plastic hangers waited like a dare. I knelt by the bottom drawer, pulled it out, reached for the fireproof folder, and found an empty space. I checked the second spot I'd used, the back of the 3rd shelf, because Dad never looks past the front row. Empty. My stomach did that slow elevator drop. I stood and found Mom at the doorway, arms crossed. "What are you looking for?" she asked, voice bored. "Documents," I said. "The folder, my passport, birth certificate. You know, the legal proof that I exist." "Oh," she said. "Your dad cleaned. He probably put it in the garage." "The garage is empty," I said. Her mouth did a sympathetic twist that always meant, "I'm not sorry." "Check the hall closet," she said. I did. A stack of boxes labeled KITCH, bath, and H for Harper. None labeled Max. On the top shelf, my toolbox sat open, half the sockets missing. I took a breath that felt like it had edges. "Found my toolbox," I said, which is wild because it was in the way last month. Dad shrugged. "We used a few things." I held up the empty socket strip like a visual aid. "A few." "Stop," Mom hissed, glancing at the clock. "Tenants don't like drama." Something in me clicked. Not a spark, more like a seatbelt locking. "No," I said, calm enough that all 3 of them looked at me. "You don't get to toss me, keep my tools, list my room on a website, and then call me dramatic because I asked for my passport. We are going to fix 3 things right now. 1. I'm leaving with my documents. 2. You're done asking me for money. 3. My name comes off every bill I've ever been roped into. Phone plan, car insurance, utilities with my social as the guarantor, all of it. Today, Dad snorted. You can't just. I can, I said. I already did the P.O. box. The rest is paperwork. Harper rolled her eyes. You really think you're above family now? This isn't about revenge, I said, voice steady enough to surprise even myself. This is about closure. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your collateral. I'm your son, and you don't treat sons like storage. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind where someone is prepping a speech. The refrigerator hummed like it wanted to be a white noise machine. Mom broke first. You owe us, she said quietly, like a last card down on the table. We raised you. I nodded once. And I worked. And I paid. And I did my share, and then some. I'm done being punished because I'm dependable. Dad's jaw tensed. If you walk out like this, don't come back asking for help. I never asked, I said. But you keep asking me. I found the folder in the laundry room, of all places, on top of a dryer sheet box, like a joke only a clerk at the DMV would enjoy. I slid the passport and certificates into my duffel. On the way out, I unplugged the little Wi-Fi mesh node I had bought and installed and set it on the counter. This is mine, I said. The main router, too. That's petty, Harper said. No, I said, finally letting a small smile out. That's accurate bookkeeping. Dad took a step toward me. Don't you dare take the... Call the police, I said, and tell them you changed the locks on your kid and put his clothes on the curb. See how that story sounds when it's not in your kitchen. We stared at each other for a long beat. He stopped moving. He wasn't used to me not blinking first. I'll be mailing you something next week, I said, slinging the strap across my chest. Read it. And then don't text me again unless it's about a death or a medical crisis. I mean it. Max, Mom said, voice going syrupy, don't do this. I already did, I said, and walked out, down the same path I'd mowed every July since I was 15, past the empty garage, past the cheap sign in the window, into the heat that felt like a clean slap. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed with a new message from Dad. You're an adult. Figure it out. I looked at it, typed my reply, and sent it without shaking. Check your mailbox next week. Then I blocked them. The envelope I sent wasn't a grenade. It was a boundary. 12 pages, simple words, printed at the library because Jordan's printer was out of ink. The cover letter said, "This is not revenge. This is notice." Inside, I listed every account bearing my name that touched theirs. Cell plan, termination date, confirmation number, car insurance, removed 2 drivers from my policy, confirmation number, electric bill at the house, my social removed as guarantor, starting 1st of the month, confirmation number, streaming platforms, shared logins, random monthly charges that quietly appeared and never got discussed, done. I included a ledger because I'm me, not to demand repayment, but to show the math of my life. 5 years of loans with dates and amounts. $9,842 total. At the bottom I wrote, I'm not collecting. I'm closing the account. I also enclosed a spare house key, a photocopy of the Wi-Fi receipt, and a notarized letter stating I would no longer authorize the use of my name, credit, or income on any application. Any attempt will be considered identity misuse, it said. I paid for certified mail. I kept the little green slips like trophies. Jordan and his boyfriend, Luis, gave me their couch for 3 nights and their spare room for 2 weeks after their roommate moved out unexpectedly. You can stay as long as you need, Jordan said, waving a spatula at me while trying not to burn quesadillas. Also, dude, that was the calmest nuclear boundary I've ever seen. I laughed for real that night for the first time in days. Day by day, I handled the boring miracles. A P.O. box key on my keychain. A new bank account. No joint users, no shortcuts. I checked my credit, found 2 inquiries from a car lot I'd never visited. I disputed them with the quiet, stubborn energy that had kept me alive in that house. I took an entry-level operations job at a local shipping firm, the same industry as Rotterdam, but with better coffee and a boss who remembered birthdays with cupcakes and names spelled correctly. At 6:05 p.m. on the 3rd Thursday, I got the delivery confirmation, signed by M. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. By noon, 39. The voicemails were a whole season of television. Mom crying, Dad furious, Harper incredulous, and Ann I hadn't heard from in 2 years telling me family isn't a contract. A cousin whispering, I'm proud of you, man, like it was contraband. I didn't respond. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and folded laundry on the floor of a room that was mine because my name was on the lease and because my rent cleared from my account alone. The quiet felt heavy at first, then clean. Life shrank into routines that belonged to me. I bought a cheap bike off Marketplace and rode along the river before work. I learned the names of 3 baristas and the correct way to ask for the muffin that doesn't taste like a candle. I went to a free legal clinic and asked a volunteer attorney to glance over my letter. She nodded and said, "It's tight. You did good." I saved the words in my pocket like a pebble. Meanwhile, my phone filled with numbers. 62, 74, 91. Blocks of missed calls that looked like spam. On day 17, Harper texted from a new number. "You really canceled the phone plan? My work email won't sync." I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, "It's $146. I'll pay you back Friday." The muscle memory to send money twitched. I let it pass. Friday came and went. So did my need to be useful. At work, my boss, Adrian, a woman who could fix a broken schedule with a pen and a sigh, taught me how to negotiate detention fees without yelling. She said, "Never apologize for a boundary. Just repeat it like a street name." I wrote that in my notebook. I used it everywhere. The second envelope I mailed was short. "Please remove any saved cards of mine from any online account I did not open." This sentence is a legal request. I mailed copies to the house, to Harper's email, to the landlord listed on the for rent sign. I got one reply. "Per tenant's request, will update records." Tenant, not son. It still pinched. Then the call slowed. Not stopped, slowed. Mom's messages turned into careful updates like weather reports. "Your father's back is worse. Harper's car needs brakes. Rent went up." Each one had a silent line under it. "This would be easier with your money." Each one hit my chest and slid off, because I had a routine, a budget, a spine. I saw my house twice. Once, biking past, I noticed a young couple carrying in a flat box of IKEA wood. Once, late, a light on in the window of what used to be my room. I felt something complicated and did the only thing that helped. I pedaled. 19 months is a long time if you're waiting for someone to blink. It's short if you're busy. I was busy. I took a certification course the company paid for. I got good at reading chaos. I kept a clean apartment with 2 plants I didn't kill. I started therapy at a community clinic, the kind where you sit on a secondhand couch and a grad student says, "That makes sense." And it does. We use simple words like fair, use, boundary, and grief. I said, "I feel stupid because I still want them to like me." And she said, "You're not stupid. You're human." I wrote that down too. On a Tuesday in month 19, I woke to 34 missed calls stacked like falling dominoes. By lunch, 187. The last voicemail was just breathing, then Dad saying, "Call me." No please. No son. Just a tone I recognized from overdue notices. At 3:11 p.m., a number I didn't know lit my phone. It was the property manager. "Is this Max?" she asked. "I'm calling because your parents listed you as emergency contact. There was an issue with rent transfer this month, and we can't reach them." "I'm not an emergency contact," I said, steady. "Please remove my number." Also, they received notice 19 months ago that my name is not connected to the account. She paused. "I see that letter attached, actually. Paperwork. Bless it." I hung up, sat with my breathing, and let the urge to fix things crest and break. The urge was loud. It sounded like Mom's crying, like Harper's, "You're being ridiculous," like Dad's, "Be a man." It sounded like the house, like the garage, like the empty hooks. Then it quieted. At 5:40 p.m., I did a small, ordinary thing. I made pasta and called Jordan to ask if he wanted half. "Always," he said. "Also, your sister just DM'd Luis. She asked if we could talk sense into you." He didn't reply. He blocked her. He's getting good at boundaries. "Tell him I'm proud," I said. "Already did," Jordan said. "And hey, proud of you too." I smiled into my bowl of food that tasted like normal. Pride is a weird muscle. It aches when you start using it. 2 months after the 187 missed calls, a letter came to my P.O. box with my last name in Mom's handwriting. Inside were 2 lines. "We didn't think you meant it. We were wrong."